What would you do if one single summer changed everything you thought you knew about yourself, your family, and your future? I never expected my life to turn upside down when I agreed to help on my uncle's farm. But that summer by the sea became the beginning of a story I can never forget. I was 19 when it happened. I had finished my first year at university, and I had made plans with my best friend for a holiday in Spain. We dreamed of sun, music, and freedom, but 2 weeks before we were meant to leave, she told me she was going with her boyfriend instead. She left me out completely. I felt betrayed, and I sat in my room for days, wondering what I should do with my empty summer. That was when the phone rang, and my uncle asked if I could come to his farm near the coast. He had broken his arm and needed help. I wanted to say no, because I hated the idea of being stuck in the countryside, but I had no other plans. Before we continue, I would love to know, have you ever had a summer where everything changed for you? Share it in the comments. And if you are enjoying this story, please remember to subscribe so you can hear more emotional English stories every week. The drive to my uncle's farm felt long and lonely. At first, I stayed on the main road, but then I decided to take a smaller road that crossed over the hills. The air became fresher, and the green fields opened up in every direction. I rolled down the window and breathed deeply. I was still sad, but I could not deny that the place was beautiful. When I reached the top of the hill, I saw the wide ocean shining in the distance. The waves rolled like silver lines under the afternoon sun, and I felt a small spark of excitement. Maybe this summer would not be so empty after all. When I arrived at the farm, my aunt came out to greet me. She smiled warmly and hugged me tightly. The house was small, painted white, and there were fields stretching all around it. It looked peaceful, but also lonely. My uncle stood by the door, his arm in a sling. He looked tired but happy to see me. I carried my bags inside and tried to imagine how I would spend the next weeks here. That first evening, we sat around the wooden table in the kitchen. The food was simple but full of flavor. My aunt explained that they were running an organic farm, and it was not easy. They grew vegetables without chemicals, and they sold them to local shops. She told me about the hard work, the long days, and the constant fight to keep the farm alive. I listened politely, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about the beach I had seen from the hill. I wanted to go there, to feel the sea on my skin, to forget my disappointment and pain. Later, when I went up to my room, I opened the window and looked out. The evening sky was red and gold, and the fields below seemed endless. At the far end of the valley, I noticed another farm. Its fields looked different, sharper somehow, as if the crops were not natural. My aunt had mentioned that some new farmers had arrived last year, and that people in the area did not trust them. I did not ask more questions then, but I had a strange feeling that those fields would play a part in my summer. The next morning, the rain began. My uncle gave me boots and gloves and asked me to help with the vegetables. I spent hours pulling carrots from the wet soil, my back hurting, my hair sticking to my face. It was hard work, and I wanted to quit. But when I looked up, I saw the hills, the sheep in the distance, and the ocean beyond. Even in the rain, it was beautiful. Still, I whispered to myself that I needed something more. something that would make this summer special. I wanted an adventure. In the afternoon, my aunt said she needed to deliver some boxes of vegetables to a shop in the nearby town. She asked me to go with her. I agreed immediately. At least it meant I could escape the mud of the farm for a few hours. As we drove along the coast road, I saw the wide beach again. The waves were higher now, wild and white against the dark sea. My heart jumped. I had never surfed before, but I wanted to try. Something about the ocean called to me, stronger than anything I had felt in months. We carried the heavy boxes from the car to the shop, and after that, my aunt went to the bank. She told me to wait for her in 15 minutes. I crossed the street and went into a small cafe. It smelled of coffee and bread. I ordered a sandwich and sat down by the window. I was halfway through eating when I noticed a boy at the next table. He was about my age, tall, with dark hair that looked like it had been kissed by the salt of the sea. He caught me looking at him, and for a second I froze. Then he smiled, and something inside me shifted. He asked if I lived nearby, and I told him about my uncle's farm. He laughed and said he was staying with his cousin for the summer. He told me he loved the sea and that surfing was his passion. When he spoke about it, his eyes lit up like the sun on the waves. I felt shy, but also curious. I had never met anyone who spoke about the ocean with such love. He asked if I had ever tried it, and I admitted that I had not. He grinned and said he could teach me. When my aunt came back, she saw us together. Her face turned serious, and she pulled me away quickly. I felt embarrassed, but also angry. In the car, I asked why she reacted that way. She explained that his family owned the farm across the valley, the one with the strange crops. She said they used chemicals, and many local people were against them. She told me to stay away from him. I did not answer. Inside, I felt torn. How could someone who spoke about the sea with such passion be dangerous? That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the rain and thinking of his smile. My aunt's warning echoed in my head, but my heart was louder. I told myself I would see him again. I wanted to know more about him, about his life, about why his family was disliked. I wanted to understand. I felt something new, something I could not explain. It was both exciting and frightening. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of the ocean. I was standing on the sand, the waves rising tall in front of me. The boy was there, calling me to follow him. I stepped into the water, and the cold shocked my skin, but then I felt alive in a way I never had before. I woke with my heart racing and my mind full of questions. I knew then that my summer would not be what I expected. It would not be quiet or simple. Something had begun, and it was already too late to turn back. The next few days at the farm were long and wet. I woke early each morning to the sound of rain on the roof. My aunt gave me jobs in the garden or the greenhouse, and my uncle asked me to help carry things because of his broken arm. The work was hard and slow, and I often thought about going home. But each time I looked out across the valley and saw the sea in the distance, I told myself to stay. Something in me wanted to wait, as if I was expecting something important to happen. On the third afternoon, the rain finally stopped, My aunt told me to take some vegetables to the market with her. I felt glad to leave the farm. As we parked the car in town, I saw the waves again, taller and brighter under the sun. My heart beat faster because I remembered his words in the cafe. I carried the boxes into the shop, but my eyes kept moving toward the street, hoping I might see him again. When my aunt went to buy some things, I walked back toward the cafe, and there he was. He stood outside, talking to another boy. When he saw me, he waved. I wanted to walk past, but I stopped. He asked if I was free. I told him I only had a little time, but he laughed and said even a little was enough. We went inside together, and he ordered a drink. His name was Daniel. He told me again about surfing and how much the sea meant to him. He spoke with such energy that I felt pulled into his world. He said he had been coming to the coast since he was a child, but this summer was different because his family needed him at the farm. He made a face when he said that, as if he hated it. I asked why, but he only shook his head and said it was complicated. I wanted to ask more, but before I could, I saw my aunt outside the window. She looked at us for a long second, then turned away. When I returned to the car, she was silent. At last, she said that I should be careful. She told me his family used chemicals on their land, and people in the town were angry about it. She said his farm was too close to hers, and their crops could mix. I listened, but inside I was confused. He did not seem like a bad person. He seemed alive, honest, and full of dreams. My aunt's words and his smile fought inside me, and I did not know which one to believe. That night, I went to my room early. I sat by the window, watching the stars appear over the valley. The other farm was dark, only one light shining near the barn. I imagined Daniel there. Maybe sitting by his window, too. I wondered if he was thinking about me. My heart felt heavy and light at the same time. I wanted to see him again, but I was afraid of what my family might say. The next morning, my aunt asked me to take some bread and eggs to a neighbor down the road. I agreed, and as I walked back, I heard a voice calling my name. Daniel was leaning on the gate, his hair messy from the wind. He asked if I wanted to see the beach with him. For a moment, I thought about refusing, but the word yes left my mouth before I could stop it. We walked together along the path that led over the hill. The sun was warm, and the air smelled of salt. When we reached the top, the view took my breath away. The beach stretched far below us, golden sand curving between the cliffs. The waves rolled in steady lines, each one breaking with white foam. Surfers were already in the water, their boards bright against the blue sea. Daniel smiled when he saw my face. He told me this place was his world, his escape, his freedom. We sat on the grass and watched the sea. He told me stories about surfing, about falling and learning, about moments when the wave carried him and he felt like he could fly. I listened, and I wanted to feel what he felt. He asked if I would try one day, and I said maybe. Inside, I wanted to say yes, but I was afraid of the ocean. Still, his voice made me believe it could be possible. When I returned to the farm, my aunt noticed my red cheeks and messy hair. She asked where I had been. I told her I had walked by the hill. It was not a lie, but it was not the full truth either. I felt guilty. but also excited. I went to bed that night with the sound of waves in my ears and the memory of his smile in my heart. Over the next week, I found reasons to go into town more often. Sometimes it was to help my aunt with shopping, sometimes to deliver vegetables. Each time I hoped to see him, and most times I did. We walked together, sometimes talking about school, sometimes about the sea, sometimes about nothing at all. Each meeting felt short, but it filled my day with light. One afternoon, when the air was warm and the sky was clear, Daniel asked me to go surfing with him on Sunday. He said the waves would be good, and he had a board I could use. I wanted to say yes immediately, but then I thought of my aunt. She would not approve. I told him I would try, and his smile told me that was enough. That evening, at dinner, my uncle spoke about the farm across the valley. He said their crops were too close, and he worried about the future. My aunt agreed, and she shook her head, saying that once chemicals touched the land, nothing would ever be the same. I felt trapped between their words and my own secret. I wanted to defend Daniel, but I kept quiet. My silence felt heavy, but my heart pulled me toward him again and again. When Sunday came, I soon told my aunt I was going to the beach for a walk. She raised her eyebrows but did not ask more. I met Daniel by the cafe, and together we carried the surfboards to the sand. The water looked wide and endless, and I felt small standing before it. He showed me how to lie on the board, how to paddle, how to stand. At first, I fell again and again. Salt water filled my mouth, and the waves pushed me down. But each time, Daniel laughed and helped me try again. At last, I managed to stand for a second before falling. It was enough. My heart was racing, and I felt alive in a way I never had before. We sat on the beach after, wet and tired, the sun warm on our faces. I looked at him, and he looked at me. There was a silence, but it was not empty. It was full of something I could not name. For a moment, I thought he would touch my hand, but he did not. He only smiled, and that was enough. When I returned to the farm, my aunt looked at me sharply. She asked if I had been with him. I could not answer. She sighed and shook her head. She said he was not for me, that his family was trouble, that his world was not mine. I wanted to shout, to tell her she was wrong, but instead I went upstairs and closed my door. I lay on my bed, listening to the sound of the sea in the distance. I knew I was falling into something dangerous, but I could not stop. That night I dreamed again. I was standing on the beach, and Daniel was there beside me. The waves rose high, and we ran together into the water. I fell, but he pulled me up, his hand strong in mine. When I woke, my heart was still racing. I told myself that dreams are only dreams, but deep inside, I knew this was more. Something was happening, something bigger than me. I felt it in every wave, in every look, in every moment with him. I was no longer the girl who came to the farm to fill her empty summer. I was someone new, someone standing at the edge of a story that could change everything. The weeks passed quickly after that Sunday on the beach. Each day I woke with new energy. Even when the work on the farm was heavy, my body ached from carrying boxes and pulling weeds, but my heart was alive. I felt I had a secret life one that belonged only to me. In the mornings, I worked with my aunt in the garden. In the afternoons, I found ways to see Daniel. We walked, we laughed, we sat by the sea. Each time I was with him, I felt the world opening wider, as if I was no longer trapped in a quiet valley, but standing at the start of something greater. But the silence at the farm grew heavier. My aunt knew something, even if she did not say it. Her eyes followed me when I came back from town, her questions quiet but sharp. My uncle tried to stay out of it, but sometimes I caught him looking at me with worry. I knew they wanted to protect me, but I felt as if they were holding me inside a cage. I was no longer a child, and I wanted to make my own choices. One evening, after a long day of work, I went to sit by the stream that crossed the valley. The water moved slowly, carrying small leaves and shadows with it. I closed my eyes and thought about Daniel. I remembered the way he held his board, the way his eyes shone when he spoke about the waves. I thought about the warnings my aunt had given me, about the other farm and their chemicals. I told myself that it was not his fault, that he was not his family. But still, the words sat heavy in my mind. The next day, I saw Daniel in town again. His smile was bright, but his face looked more tired than before. When I asked why, he said his father was worried. The farm was not doing well. People did not want to buy from them because of the way they grew their crops. I wanted to comfort him, but I did not know how. He said he felt trapped, as if he belonged to a fight that was not his own. He told me he wished he could leave and spend all his time by the sea. I listened, and I felt the same. I too wanted to escape, but in a different way. One Sunday, he asked me to meet him early. We walked along the cliff path, the ocean wide and blue below us. The wind pulled at my hair, and the sound of waves rose like a song. We stopped at a quiet place where the grass grew long. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. He said he liked me more than he had expected. He said I had changed his summer. My heart jumped at his words, and I wanted to answer, but fear closed my mouth. I felt both joy and panic. I was falling for him, but I knew it would not last. When I returned to the farm that evening, my aunt was waiting. She asked where I had been. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. I told her I had walked by the cliffs. She did not believe me. She said she knew I was with him, and she asked me to stop. I asked why. She told me again about the chemicals, about the danger to their farm, about the fights in the village. She said his family was the reason they struggled. Her words were heavy, but my heart refused them. I went to my room and closed the door, tears filling my eyes. I felt caught between two worlds, between loyalty and love. The days that followed were full of quiet tension. I worked on the farm, but my mind was elsewhere. Each time I saw Daniel, I felt alive. Each time I returned home, I felt guilty. It was as if two parts of me were fighting, and I did not know which would win. One evening, the rain returned, the sky grew dark, and the wind pushed hard against the windows. I sat in my room, listening to the storm. I thought of Daniel and wondered if he was safe. Suddenly, I felt a need to see him, to know he was there. I put on my coat and walked into the rain. The road was wet and shining, and the water ran across my boots. When I reached the gate of his farm, I stopped. The house was dark, except for one light. I stood there, shaking from the cold, and I realized how far I had gone. He came out when he saw me. His hair was wet, his clothes heavy with rain. He looked surprised, but not angry. He asked why I had come. I said I wanted to see him. For a long moment, we stood in silence, the storm around us. Then he took my hand, and the world grew quiet. His hand was warm, and mine stopped shaking. He told me again that he liked me. This time I answered. I told him I felt the same. His smile was soft, and his eyes full of light. I will never forget that moment. The next morning, my aunt noticed the tired look on my face. She did not ask questions, but I could feel her sadness. She wanted to protect me, but she could not stop my heart. I helped her with the work, but inside I was somewhere else. I knew my time at the farm was almost finished. Summer was moving quickly, and soon I would return to the city. The thought made me both sad and relieved. As the weeks closed, Daniel and I met whenever we could. We walked by the sea, we sat on the cliffs, we spoke about dreams. He wanted to travel, to chase the waves across the world. I wanted to study, to build a future, but also to keep a piece of this summer in my heart. We were young, and we both knew it. Still, we held on to every hour as if it were our last. On my final day at the farm, the sun was bright and the air was clear. I packed my bag slowly, looking out at the hills and the sea. My aunt hugged me tightly. She whispered that she hoped I had learned something here, something I would carry with me. I nodded, though I could not speak. My uncle smiled and wished me luck. They did not mention Daniel, but their eyes said enough. I met him one last time by the beach. The sand was warm, and the waves rolled in steady lines. We sat together, our shoulders touching, our words few. He told me he would miss me, and I told him I would miss him too. He gave me a small stone he had found on the sand, smooth and white. He said it was for me to remember. I held it in my hand and felt my chest tighten. I wanted to promise something, but I could not. I only whispered thank you. When I walked away from him, I felt as if part of me was staying behind. I looked back once and saw him still sitting there, watching the waves. My eyes filled with tears, but I kept walking. I knew life would take me forward, but a piece of my heart would always remain on that beach, with him, with the sound of the sea, with the summer that had changed me forever. Back in the city, life returned to its usual rhythm. University, books, friends, and noise filled my days. But at night, when the world grew quiet, I often thought of him. I remembered the storm, the waves, the cliffs, the way his hand felt in mine. I did not know if I would ever see him again, but I knew I would never forget. That summer gave me more than I expected. It gave me freedom, love, and loss. It taught me that sometimes life does not go as we plan, but that can be the most powerful gift of all. It taught me that even short moments can change us deeply, and it taught me that the heart can carry memories forever, like waves that return again and again to the shore. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more emotional English stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had a summer that changed your life? I would love to read your stories.